The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. New equipment is on its way to Nanaimo's hospital following a successful fundraiser over the holiday season. Between mid-November and January 15th, the Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation raised more than $2.1 million, beating its goal by over $500,000. Among the purchases enabled through these donations are 6 new incubators for the neonatal unit and a holmium laser, a device which aids in prostate cancer treatment. Founded in 1977, the Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation raises money for island health initiatives like new equipment purchases. Today on the program, we'll dive into how exactly Island Health and the Hospital and District Foundation prioritize and fund equipment purchases. We'll also hear from Dr. Will Carlson, a urologist at Nanaimo Regional General Hospital, who will explain what exactly a holmium laser is. First, I spoke with Barney Ellis Perry, CEO of the Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation. The Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation has blasted past its goal for its most recent fundraiser, raising $2.1 million. What is that money going to allow the foundation to do?
The goal, achieving that goal was phenomenal. The goal was 1.5 million, so to get to 2.1 million was awesome, and that allows us to do a lot of really important things. One of the big areas where we raised over $505,000 during Giving Tuesday in December was for our maternity and NICU. So we're able to buy 6 giraffe. The name of the company is a giraffe. It cracks me up. But they're incubators. They're about $75,000 each, and they provide basically the most almost as applicable, as close as it can be for the child, the baby, to be in the womb from a perspective of the warmth and the humidity. They are incredibly sort of realistic and the highest technology. They also ensure that the child doesn't have to be moved to be weighed or for other procedures, so everything can be done in one place. So they're completely state-of-the-art, and the ones we had were breaking down. So the team, this was one of the highest priorities that they had put forward to management. So really excited to do that. We're also able to buy a $40,000 stretcher. So should the baby have to be transported by ambulance or helicopter, they have a specific transfer stretcher now, as well as a fetal monitor, which is one of over 20 that we need to fundraise for, but we were able to at least get one that monitors the baby and the mother. So that was a really big deal for the NICU. NRGH, our maternity and NICU unit, which is neo-intensive care unit, or neonatal intensive care unit, is the only one in Central North Island. So we are where the helicopters come with mothers who are having complications from all over Vancouver Island. And because Island Health also serves on the mainland, parts of northern British Columbia, we also have mothers coming from there. So that was a really big deal. The other area was cancer care. We were able to get a state-of-the-art, it's called a holmium laser, and it is used for prostate and urological cancer treatment and other urology-related issues. It's $312,000, and one donor funded the majority of that, and then a fun hockey tournament and a few other things funded the rest to get to the $312,000. That's replacing a machine that was over 12 years old on a 10-year lifespan. So this really allows us to up our game in providing those services to men in Central North Island. And the other thing is it allows the cancer or the treatments to be less invasive and faster, so we can get more patients through and reduce the wait list, which is great. We also did some equipment for our high-intensity rehab unit, which is a really important area. The donor was an individual who's just lovely human who went to bed healthy, woke up the next morning unable to walk, was told he may never walk again. And 3 months later, in the new year, just the beginning of January, he walked out of the hospital. And so he wanted to say thank you by purchasing 2 neurological tables for evaluation, for client or patient evaluation, and a support walker, as that is something that he was using. And they needed some new ones. We also, so that was all amazing. We also raised over $650,000 towards our $2.9 million goal of a SPEC CT machine. And the SPEC CT is a really critical tool for advanced imaging and diagnostics. It is really important when we're looking to diagnose people in for cardiac issues or looking for cancer, which is over about 70% of the patients who will be using that machine, or we're looking for cardiac or cancer issues. It's nuclear medicine, so it's absolutely state of the art. We currently have one that was installed last year. And this one will replace 2 very aging CT scanners, one of which apparently has duct tape on it, and allow us to really reduce the wait times and offer much more detailed diagnostics to our patients. So we're really excited about that. So we made really good progress against that goal as well. So yeah, the 2.1 million is going to really high profile and high impact equipment across the hospital.
In general, can you break down the funding model for equipment in hospitals? What are the things that are funded through the health authority via the province? And what comes from donors? What's your role in all this? How do you decide the priorities, that kind of thing?
How much time do we have? So at the highest level, the decisions are made at a central unit in Victoria for Island Health, and that is the capital department. And they have analysts and a lot of very smart people who work with each site in assessing what are the needs for that site. And they do that against the available budget for equipment replacement and projects at sites. So, for example, and then they work with those sites. And so every manager of a department on site, is given a time period where they have to submit their priorities, and there's a spreadsheet they have to use that is really cool, actually, because it has a rating system that's an international standard, but it's a rating system for what is the patient impact and what is the impact for the healthcare worker teams. And so they use that. And it's of course a bit of a bun fight because everyone is top priority, right? So at NRGH, the numbers are general, but what was submitted for the upcoming fiscal 26 was over $65 million of equipment and projects. What was approved to be funded by the health authority was $1.8 million. So there's a big gap there. So that's where the foundation and the hospital auxiliary comes in. We sit at the table with hospital leadership. We go through these lists, and firstly, we look at what we call above the line. What's been approved in that $1.8 million? If there's items on that list that we believe we can fundraise for and donors would be excited about, such as the Holium laser that had been on the list for quite a while, if we fund that, then we contribute our money to that, then that allows the Island Health budget to expand. So we can then fund something below the line, something that didn't make the cut. So we do that first. That's our top priorities. What can we fund that's been because we know those are the ultimate highest, most important things. Now, there's always going to be items on there that donors would have no interest in. And frankly, there's some things on there that donors may not want to see their money go towards. So, we don't fund everything on that list, but we fund as much as we can. Then we look at what's below the line. So what have we covered from our fundraising above the line, if you will? We then look at what else is below the line. So for this year, for example, so far this year, and we're 3/4 of the way through our fiscal year, we have funded $4.1 million of equipment, of high impact equipment that was above and below the line. So that's what we're able to do is just, if the budget was, I think last year the budget was $2.4 million. So we've covered some of that. And we have covered our $4.1 million, but also allowed the Island Health budget to go a lot further. So we're able to buy a lot more equipment overall. So everything that we fund has to be approved by Island Health, has to be in this system called eCase, because if it's in there and if it's approved, we know that Island Health will fund the maintenance and operation of that equipment, and they have the staff to do so. So our worst case scenario would be to fund something that was, maybe a shiny object that a surgeon really wanted. But if Island Health isn't going to fund the maintenance and operations and doesn't have the staff to do it, it's just going to sit in a corner. So we want to make sure the stuff that we fund is ordered as fast as possible and is running as fast as possible and is going to be supported. So, for example, I mentioned earlier about the incubators and the transfer stretcher, et cetera, for the maternity. Well, what was really cool was the day after our fundraising event, when we went past a goal of $300,000 to get to $505,000 to buy it all, that stretcher that I mentioned was ordered and it was on site 2 weeks later. That type of stuff is really cool. So we work really closely with Island Health on all of this. The other aspect is for new builds and new big projects, such as the high intensity rehab, the high acuity unit, and the ICU that is now open. We funded all of the equipment in that. So the model was for that build. It's about the critical care building. Is about a $65 million project, and Island Health funded 60% of the construction, and the Nanaimo Regional Hospital District, which is our local taxpayers, funded 40% of the construction, and the foundation funded all of the equipment, which was $10.5 million. So it really was a $75 million project. So we come to the table for projects like that. So, for example, if and when we build a cath lab in Nanaimo, we will fund more than likely all of the equipment in that cath lab, which will be many, many millions of dollars.
I wanted to get there in our conversation today. I think people, especially with the recent election campaign, have heard a lot about the needs, the work of the Fair Care Alliance through the work of the Fair Care Alliance. I've heard a lot about the needs for the cath lab, the new patient tower. So your role in that would be furnishing those with equipment through donations.
Yeah. For the cath lab specifically, that will be our focus, and it's been incredible. Like we've been very ecstatic to at least get an election promise for a cath lab, but we don't have a firm project yet. We're doing everything we can to get that, but we don't have a firm project, and we have over $3 million committed from donors to the cath lab to equip the cath lab. Without even doing a campaign. So it's that type of thing for the hospital tower itself, which is, if we got approval today, it's, 8 to 10 years till we open the doors. We would be fundraising for a lot of equipment in there, probably not all of it, but a lot of it. And that'll be the biggest campaign in the foundation's history for sure.
And to make sure and sum up what you said earlier, the way this works is every year you and Island Health get together and you identify these are the priorities, these are the pieces of equipment we need, this is the budget we have, there will always be a shortfall. And what you do is you pick the projects that you think the community is going to respond to, and these are the ones that could be funded by the community. And those are what you fundraise for. You decide to do every year once Island Health agrees, we'll pay for the maintenance of that.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, the only tiny nuance in there is that for the foundation and our strategic plan, we have 6 areas of focus. And so when we look at those lists, we look for areas in our areas of focus, such as cancer care, such as cardiac care, such as mental health, et cetera.
Historically, when you've set those goals, when you've said these are the things we're going to fundraise for, have you always been able to make them happen?
That's a good question. I think there was, I say I've only been here 2.5 years. I know there was a campaign in the past that I think by the time that they set the goal and raised the money, Island Health decided not to pursue, I think, buying that piece of equipment or whatever it was, and they offered, so they couldn't do it, so they offered to return the money to the donor, who luckily rerouted it, because I think it was $1 million gift, rerouted it to setting up a part of the cardiology program at the Oceanside Healthcare Center.
But there's never been a circumstance where you've sort of identified these are the things we need the most, and therefore people will be willing to give. And then, it's always come through that somehow that equipment is being. Yeah,
somehow is the operative word. We had a campaign this last spring because we also serve the Oceanside Health Center and 3 long-term care facilities, and we did a direct mail campaign for to raise $50,000 for the long-term care facilities for equipment and like basically patient impact. So things that would make the patients' lives better in those sites. And it was a bust. Like we raised maybe $1,300. It was just almost funny how much it failed. But then we were very fortunate that the Elder Care Foundation, which is a new foundation based in Victoria, they were sort of our knight in shining armor, and they funded the full $50,000. So we were able to make some improvements at our 3 long-term care facilities. So yeah, not everything we try works, but often we find another way to solve the problem.
Yeah, I'm just taken. Like, it must be a safety net. Like, you would expect the model would be like Island Health will fund the things we need the most, and then we'll fundraise for the rest. But it sounds like it's almost, we'll be able to get more equipment by taking the opposite approach of getting people to fund the things we need the most and then buying the less glitzy things with the money we do have.
Exactly. Like, nobody wants to fund a cooler in the morgue, right? But we need a cooler in the morgue. One of the pieces on the list for this year that's been approved is a $450,000 piece of equipment that is for a department in the basement of the hospital that tirelessly cleans all of the equipment for the operating rooms and the medical procedure rooms. And it's an autoclave for $450,000. Well, I don't think I'm going to have any luck finding a donor to cover that, So that's where that will be paid for within the $1.8 million allocated from Island Health. But there's a lot of other things on that list that we are taking on and we will fundraise for this year. So, and Island Health is really excited about this model because, it gets them more at the end of the day, thanks to our, the generous donors. They're getting more equipment and they're able to really make a difference in the hospital. And this is the first time, it's a new process. And because they've been doing big projects like the critical care building, we haven't really done a big push for equipment throughout NRGH. It's a really old site. And so the $4.1 million so far, and there's more coming, has had a really big impact. And it's also impacted staff morale as well in a really positive way. Which we're excited about. There's also other angle to the philanthropy side of it, and that is leverage. And so, for example, the cath lab conversation, that started 2.5 years ago when I started because a donor told me he was going to leave $1 million in his will to equip a cath lab. And I'm like, what's a cath lab? And when I talked to the Island Health leadership, they were like, oh, yeah, there's going to be a cath lab. It'll be in the new hospital. And, my question was, well, when do we get a new hospital? Well, we don't know. So there was no there was no project. And that pledge of $1 million allowed us to start a conversation within Island Health that has ended up where we are today, which is we are laying the groundworks for a much more intensive cardiology program for Central North Vancouver Island. And eventually that will include a cath lab. And it's been there's a lot of leverage that comes when you have really engaged donors who are, passionate about specific areas. And it doesn't always work, but a lot of the times it does.
What are the big takeaways you think people need to know? So this campaign is over. You already talked about a campaign that some of the excess funds you raised are going towards. Mm-hmm. What is on the agenda coming up this year? How can people help?
Well, the number one thing I think people can do is pay attention, is to, understand the state of healthcare in Central North Island versus South Island. And the Fair Care Alliance has a great website that details some of that, but really watch the media, pay attention to the stories that are being published about healthcare, and really understand that this community is woefully underfunded, equipped. We don't have a cath lab. There's so many tertiary programs we don't have, and a tertiary program is basically what you have. NRGH is a tertiary hospital, and that's where all the other community hospitals and the health centers in Central North Island refer here. They refer, so we're called a referral center. So they refer their patients here should they need more intensive cardiac help, cancer. Soon there'll be cancer treatment center. Renal. So if you have kidney problems, anywhere Central North Island, you're coming here. MS, things like that. And we don't have these programs fully built out. The renal program is our only one, and soon we'll have a fully built out cardiology program, but we have so much work to do. So I want really people to understand the issues, and I want them to raise it with the politicians and to make sure that we really drive home with our elected officials how important it is for them to make good on those promises. And then, think what they can do. Where are they passionate about? Where do they want to give? We have lots of needs throughout. As I say, we have 6 thematic areas. And if they have something they're passionate about, we'd love to talk to them about that, but making a gift and or rallying their community to make a gift. The Holium laser that's supporting prostate cancer. That men's hockey team, they put on a great tournament, during Prostate Awareness Week or month, stuff like that. Like, there's lots of things people can do. And it's also spreading the word about, the need to give and what it means. And, a lot of the people who make the big gifts are not people you read about in the paper. They're not flashy. They're very humble. They're very quiet. And you never know, where people, what their abilities are, or, what they would like to do. So by having the conversations about philanthropy in our community, and really elevating those conversations, we can all boats will rise for the hospital and the hospital foundation, but also, for the hospice and for, the art gallery and for the Nanaimo Food Share and all the other organizations. So it's a generous community, but there's huge need. And so there's always more need for more generous people.
If someone does make a donation to the hospital foundation, what percentage of that, how much is able to go towards purchasing new equipment?
It depends on how we approach that. So for some donors, if they're giving specifically, say to, a piece of cancer equipment, and they say to us, we want 100% to go towards that piece of equipment, we can do that. In general, for our general funds, our cost of administration is running at about 18.9%. And that's for all of the funds that that's sort of our cost against all of our funds raised. And that's for the administration and for the staff and the marketing and the campaigns that we do. And so it sort of depends project by project, but if somebody wants it to be 100% flow through, then we do that as well. And we're able to do that because we have some endowed funds that we have, generate interest from that we use towards our administration costs. And we run 2 businesses. We're quite entrepreneurial, and we have the Code Brew Cafe in the hospital, and we also have the Lifeline program for seniors and people who are housebound or need to call if they need to call medical services. We run that program. So the profits from our 2 businesses also support our bottom line. So it makes us very competitive in that way, which is great.
Well, Barney Ellis-Perry, thank you so much for taking the time to speak.
Thank you, Joe. Totally appreciate it. That's awesome.
Barney Ellis-Perry is CEO of the Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada and generous listeners like you. Support and grow our nonprofit newsroom project today at chly.ca/donate with a monthly or one-time donation. With your support, we can expand Midcoast Morning from 2 to 3 original programs per week to cover local news, current affairs, and arts and culture.
New equipment is coming to Nanaimo's hospital. The Nanaimo and District Hospital Foundation raised more than $2 million over the last 2 months, money that will allow for the purchase of a number of new devices. Among them is a Holium laser. I spoke with Dr. Will Carlson to find out what exactly that does.
My name is Will Carlson. I'm a urologic surgeon here at Nanaimo Hospital. Came here in about 2011 and have been loving it ever since. And I practice with 3 other urologists. We have the whole city and a bulk of the Central Island covered. And we work at Nanaimo Regional Hospital doing our operations and have a clinic across the street where we see patients and do our follow-ups. So that's kind of our practice.
And now you have a new Holium laser to work with. What is that?
That's an awesome question. So urology is a pretty cool specialty in the sense we do use a lot of technology to help people with a wide variety of different urologic issues. So a Holium laser is an amazing tool. We actually have an old Holium laser, which has served our community very well for approximately 10 years, but unfortunately is on its last legs. And so very appreciative of the donors from this city who have been able to help us get a new one. So a holmium laser is an instrument that generates a lot of energy, and we deliver it through a small laser that we have inside our instruments in various parts of the genitourinary system. And it allows us to treat a wide variety of issues. Primarily, it helps with kidney stones, which are a very common issue that affect lots of people locally. And then also it helps us with various malignancies or cancers that sometimes can get in tight spots up in the kidneys and in the ureters. So this laser is incredibly powerful, and it's able to break stone into little tiny pieces, sometimes into dust, but yet be safe enough we can use it in the body so it doesn't damage other tissues or other important structures that are around. So it's really an invaluable tool that allows us to help a lot of people.
You mentioned that this is replacing a laser that was past its useful life. What is the change going to be in terms of how many people you are able to help with the new one, kind of not past its best before date version?
Yeah, well, there's sort of a never-ending supply of patients who need the laser and the services it can provide. In terms of the newer technology, it's just all, as you can imagine, more efficient, more streamlined, more safe, more effective. And it'll just allow us to, continue with our fourth urologist and the increased OR time that we have. This laser will just allow us to keep up with the demand that is here locally. I don't have exact numbers, how many more, but I mean, it would probably be at least 25% more with our new urologist that's helping us get through the wait list and help more people that come in. So it's a really exciting time for us, and we're just so appreciative to the community for stepping up and helping us get this piece of equipment.
If there are people who feel like they would want to contribute something to the urological care system or capacity or make a difference, is there anything that they can do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody has different financial means, and through the foundation, sometimes we get very large donations, which are so appreciated, but you know what, even small donations, or sometimes it's even volunteer time helping out with the fundraising campaigns or whatever people can contribute. Specifically to urology, I know some people donate and they like it earmarked to a certain area of medicine based on possibly personal experiences, which is great. But yeah, any way you can get involved with fundraising and helping for, the Nanaimo Foundation, the hospital foundation, I just think it makes a huge difference. The biggest ticket item, is not urology specific, but I think we're all working towards a bigger, newer tower so we can address the increased needs of the Central Island. And so I think that's where most people are going to be able to contribute moving forward, as we fundraise and lobby government and just try to recognize we treat a lot of people here, and we're going to need a little more space to do it. A lot of exciting changes with the cancer center coming, absolutely fantastic. But, with that comes sicker patients. We're going to need more physicians, more nurses, more support staff, and more space. So I think we're moving in the right direction. But yeah, anyway, anybody can get involved when they're remembering their, charitable donations or who they want to donate to. I think the Nanaimo Hospital Foundation is a really, really worthy cause, and it goes directly back into our community and the members of our community. So it's pretty exciting and pretty important.
While I've got you on the line and we're on the subject of this holmium laser, is there any particular message you think it's important to share with people, important to pass people on, that could make a difference in their health?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded topic. There's for sure. And it's hard because, unfortunately, so many of our patients in our community and around the province, are lacking primary care. So, I think there are some warning signs specifically with urology care. I think most people would clue into some pretty extreme warning signs. If you're urinating blood or have hematuria, those are obviously things that you just can't wait on. You need to get checked out. We do a lot of prostate health and men's health and prostate cancer screening. Although it is controversial, it is very important for people to at least be aware of the issue, because prostate cancer is basically the second most leading cause of cancer death in men. And so, doing our best to make sure we're aware of the issues and preventing it or trying to screen for it in an appropriate population. I think talk to your doctor about that. Otherwise, just everybody being as proactive as they can with their health, eating well, exercising, doing the best they can. I know it's challenging, but it makes a big difference. And I talk to my patients. I say, I know it's hard right now, but it's going to be even harder 5 years from now. So if we're going to make changes, just do your best to get on it and look for supports and try to get it done.
When you say it's controversial, what part of it is controversial?
Well, prostate cancer screening, the screening test we have is a combination between PSA, which is a prostate-specific antigen blood test, and then in combination with a rectal exam, which is a finger in the rectum to palpate the prostate and feel for abnormalities that could indicate prostate cancer. And, traditionally going back when PSA first came out in the 80s, it diagnosed a lot of prostate cancer, and it was very exciting. And as always happens in medicine, our evolution of knowledge, we've sort of learned that prostate cancer as we get older is almost a normal part of aging. You live long enough, you're probably going to have prostate cancer as a man. And a lot of those prostate cancers are not what we call clinically significant. So that means you'll probably die of something else before the grumbling prostate cancer actually affects you. However, unfortunately, we sort of get that message out there, and most people or some people sort of say, well, we don't need to do any screening because, it never kills you. And in actual fact, it does kill a lot of people, and it kills them prematurely, and we lose years that, people that could have lived. And so I think the key with the prostate screening is the way we do it now and the way we manage it now is a lot more accurate and effective. And, it's worth sort of recognizing that the current strategies with prostate cancer are actually going to help a lot of people. And I don't want people to just sort of ignore not doing it, because we know what happens. Before we had a PSA and we did any PSA screening, patients most typically presented with prostate cancer in the emergency room with what we call a pathologic fracture. And at that point, the cancer had already spread to the bones and they were in trouble. And I just certainly don't want to go back to that state of affairs because, it's tough and we're missing out on helping a lot of people.
Is there anything else you think it's important to share with people about this news and this new laser?
I think mostly it's gratitude and appreciation, and thank you for investing in our hospital and trusting us with the equipment and trusting us with taking care of the patients of this community. It's a wonderful place to work. It's a wonderful place to live. And we just really, really appreciate all the support. It's hard work. Some days are better than others, but, we always feel like the community's behind us, and that makes it a lot better.
Dr. Carlson, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for your interest and thanks for the exposure.
Dr. Will Carlson is a urologist at Nanaimo Regional General Hospital. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and Arby Frew is our technical advisor. Special thanks to Lauren McKenzie for additional production assistance with this episode. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe for updates from our nonprofit newsroom and more. Our theme song is First One by a local Nanaimo band, Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Salish Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.